Hi, I'm Christina. Let me tell you about the family I'm married into, the Andersons. Old money, a sprawling mansion in Connecticut, and more traditions than you can count. I work as a nurse at Hartford Hospital, and that's where I met their golden boy, Mark. He was in his residency when we clicked. Charming, sweet, and refreshingly different from his stuffy family. At least that's what I thought. Everything changed after the wedding. His mother, Eleanor, was the perfect mix of Cruella de Vil and Martha Stewart. She began showing her true colors immediately. Christina, dear, Anderson women don't work after marriage, she'd say, her tone dripping with condescension. Christina, honey, it's embarrassing to discuss hospital stories at dinner. My father-in-law, Richard, was no better. He'd sit in his study, nodding along in silence, puffing on one of his overpriced cigars. The only decent one was Claire, Mark's younger sister. She'd roll her eyes during Eleanor's lectures and shoot me sympathetic glances. One day, Claire whispered to me, they did the same thing to Mark's college girlfriend. Drove her out within months. But I wasn't going anywhere. I loved Mark, and he loved me, even if he had the infuriating habit of saying, that's just how they are, whenever I pointed out his parents' appalling behavior. Then the pain started. At first it was small, just faint twinges in my lower abdomen. Being a nurse, I knew something was wrong. But every time I brought up seeing a doctor, Eleanor would cut me off. Andersons handle things privately. We have our own family physician, she'd insist, referring to their ancient doctor who hadn't practiced in decades. When the pain hit hard, it nearly brought me to my knees. One evening during one of Eleanor's lavish parties, Claire noticed me gripping the counter. You look pale, she said, worried. I'm fine, I managed, but my legs were trembling. Mark stood across the room, deep in conversation with his father about hospital administration. Eleanor glided over, her pearls gleaming like a weapon. Christina, compose yourself. The Whitmans just arrived, she hissed. That's when everything went black. The last thing I heard was Claire shouting my name and Eleanor whispering sharply, not in front of the guests. When I came to, I was in bed. The room spun as I tried to sit up. We need to call an ambulance, I rasped. Don't be dramatic, Eleanor's icy voice cut through. Dr. Peterson will be here in the morning. He's handled all our medical situations for 30 years. Mark, my doctor husband, sat beside me, squeezing my hand weakly. Mother's right, he said. He treated my appendicitis when I was 12. I stared at him, disbelief battling with the pain that tore through my body. My husband, a man sworn to save lives, was siding with them. The betrayal was worse than the agony. At least let me go to the hospital myself, I pleaded, fumbling for my phone. Eleanor snatched it away with surprising speed. No hospitals, no outsiders. Family matters stay within these walls. Claire helped me to my room as the sounds of classical music and laughter drifted up from below. Once we were alone, she spilled everything. The Andersons had a sordid history of covering up medical emergencies to avoid scandal. Grandmother died because they waited too long. Cousin Sarah lost a kidney. Even my asthma was treated with herbal tea, she confessed, her voice trembling. They're obsessed with appearances. She gestured to her father's study. There's a whole room of medical records in there, every covered-up crisis, every hushed diagnosis. Suddenly, the pain spiked so sharply that I screamed. Mark burst in, his face torn. Mother says Dr. Peterson will come first thing in the morning. She'll be dead by morning. Claire exploded. Just like Grandma. As they argued, I discreetly reached for Claire's phone, my vision blurring. But I managed to dial 911. As the operator answered, I heard Eleanor's heels clicking ominously down the hallway. Help, I whispered into the phone. Hartford Hospital nurse, medical emergency, Anderson Estate. The chaos that followed felt surreal. My colleagues at Hartford Hospital could barely believe their eyes when I was wheeled into the emergency room. Dr. Sarah Chen, my best friend from the cardiac unit, immediately took charge. Ruptured appendix with severe peritonitis. We need her in surgery now, she barked. Mark stood frozen in the waiting room as the perfect Anderson family image crumbled around him. My coworkers, having seen too many cases of medical neglect, weren't about to stay quiet. Dr. Chen confronted Mark directly, her voice echoing across the ER. She could have died. As a doctor, you should know better. 4 hours of documented refusal to seek medical care, and now your wife has sepsis because someone decided appearances mattered more than her life. When I woke up 2 days later, Claire was sitting vigil by my bedside, clutching a thick manila folder. Mark was slumped in a corner chair, looking like he aged a decade overnight. I broke into Daddy's study, Claire announced, her eyes blazing. Every family medical incident for the past 40 years, Grammy's heart attack, Sarah's kidney failure, even your appendicitis, Mark. Everything they tried to hide. Mark finally stirred. I never knew. I remember being sick, but Mother always said it wasn't that serious. They gaslighted you your entire life, Claire snapped. Made you think their way was normal. Well, guess what? Christina's medical team is building a case. Criminal negligence, medical endangerment, they've got it all documented. That's when Hurricane Eleanor burst into the room, Richard trailing behind her. How dare you air our private matters, she hissed. I've already spoken to the hospital board about your staff's unprofessional behavior. Shut up, Mother. Mark's voice was quiet but firm. The room froze. He'd never spoken to her like that before. I've read the files, seen the evidence. You nearly killed Christina, just like you almost killed me, just like you killed Grammy. It stops now. Eleanor's face turned purple with fury. Everything I did was to protect this family's reputation, you ungrateful. Protect? I interrupted, sitting up despite the pain. Anger gave me strength. You left Sarah with one kidney. You watched your mother die rather than call an ambulance. You made your own son think suffering was normal. Some protection. Claire smiled grimly. The board already has copies of everything. Turns out, they're not big fans of wealthy families covering up medical emergencies, especially when one of their nurses was nearly killed. Richard stepped forward, likely preparing some patriarchal defense, but Mark cut him off. Get out. All your precious society friends will know exactly what kind of family the Andersons really are. Every single detail. Eleanor backed toward the door, sputtering, while Mark took my hand. I'm so sorry, he whispered, but they'll never hurt anyone again. Claire smirked. And we're just getting started. The medical board hearing became the scandal of Hartford's elite social circle. Eleanor and Richard sat stiffly in their designer suits as doctor after doctor testified about the Andersons' pattern of medical neglect. Their precious reputation unraveled thread by thread. Dr. Chen didn't hold back. Not only did they deny care to their daughter-in-law, she said, but we've uncovered 17 separate incidents of medical emergencies hidden or improperly treated, 1 resulting in death, 3 in permanent disability. The Anderson family lawyer looked like he was having an aneurysm. He might as well have been trying to defend the indefensible. Claire's documentation was airtight, and my medical colleagues refused to mince words. Mark testified last. I was conditioned from childhood to accept this as normal. My medical training was constantly at war with their family traditions. But watching them nearly kill my wife, that opened my eyes to decades of abuse. Eleanor's perfectly composed mask finally cracked. We were protecting you, all of you. Protecting us? I shot back, standing despite the still healing incision. It cost Sarah her kidney, cost your mother her life, and almost cost me mine. And for what? So you could keep hosting your charity galas? The board's decision was unanimous. Eleanor and Richard were charged with criminal negligence and medical endangerment. Their social empire crumbled as former friends scrambled to distance themselves. The mysterious illnesses and deaths in the Anderson family were no longer a mystery, but I wasn't done. During my recovery, I started a support group for survivors of medical neglect and family abuse. You'd be shocked how many wealthy families cling to similar traditions. Claire became our star advocate, using her insider knowledge to help others break free. Mark sold his share of the family practice and opened a clinic in an underserved community. No one gets turned away, he promised. No one's emergency gets ignored. Last week, I recently spoke at a medical conference about recognizing signs of familial medical neglect. Claire tells me that Richard now spends his days alone in that massive house, all his so-called friends gone, surrounded only by the very medical records that exposed his empire. Karma has a sense of irony, doesn't it? As for me, I'm still a nurse, but now I specialize in helping abuse survivors navigate the healthcare system. Every time I help someone escape a situation like mine, I think about that night I collapsed on their pristine Persian rug. Sometimes the best revenge isn't retribution, it's ensuring no one else suffers the same fate. That concludes Christina's shocking story about the dark underbelly of the prestigious Anderson family. But let's take a moment to reflect. Imagine being in a life or death situation like Christina's, where your spouse, a medical professional sworn to save lives, chose family reputation over your survival. What would be your breaking point? Could you rebuild trust as Christina did when Mark finally stood up to his parents? Or would his initial inaction, his compliance with Eleanor's cruelty, be an unforgivable betrayal? Consider the layers here. Mark watched Christina suffer for hours while following his mother's orders, knowing full well the potential consequences. He had been conditioned since childhood to prioritize family image over health and safety. Yet, he eventually found his courage, broke free from his parents, and dedicated his life to making amends through his new clinic. So, which is worse? The in-laws' active cruelty or Mark's passive compliance? And at what point does childhood conditioning stop being an excuse for harmful adult behavior? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Would you have called 911 sooner than Christina did? Would you have pressed charges against the in-laws? What would it take for you to forgive a spouse who initially chose their toxic family over your life? If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these important stories reach others who might need to hear them. Share your thoughts below, and let's have a real conversation about family loyalty, survival, and the courage to break toxic cycles. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story that might make you question everything you thought you knew about family dynamics. Together, we're building a community that supports survivors and holds toxic behavior accountable. Let's keep the conversation going.